It takes a fair while to make an exam up anyway, but then to have to go and make up a special one just for one boy, that's a lot of investment in that particular boy. Not that every boy's not worth it, every boy is worth it, but we don't want to compromise on the time that we're taking away from teachers actually preparing for work that's going to happen in the classroom. So my advice would be, number one, work out the fact that whether you want to go through to year 11 and you're going to be conscientious about what you're doing, because you have to be at school till you're 17. The other thing I didn't add there are a couple of gentlemen who actually left St Greg's, they went somewhere else, we chased them over where they were going, they didn't tell us, and I have a responsibility then that I have to forward paperwork onto docs to say they're not at school and have to be, and then I also have to inform the Department of Education, who have the avenue to take a legal process there if they wish. Do they do it with all boys? I'm not sure, but those things are out there, and that has become more prominent just in the last 12 months than it's ever been before. So we do have to follow up everyone who doesn't return. And then having said that too, boys who are going off to do apprenticeships, there is a lot of paperwork to cover, and we have to have all that paperwork returned to us, otherwise we have to keep chasing all the time. Leaving that aside, going through to year 11, as I said, I will monitor reports going along to the end of term 3 in year 11, and I will signpost things if boys are not performing, but they need to perform if they're going through into year 12. I spoke to the boys earlier about having a beige year or an average year, and you don't want your sons having that. You want them working to the best of their ability if they're going to have a positive outcome at the end of year 12. And looking at these gentlemen in front of me, and when I went through the reports today, I was pretty happy about it. I have a green pen I use for all the great reports, and I have a red pen where we need to talk to them. And fortunately, with this year cohort, I do not have many red pen marks in there. Some of those boys who have got the red pen, yes, I will see them, and we will talk about a plan of study to move forward so they can be successful at the end of the year. But you can only support them to the parents. It's up to the gentleman in front of us to make out what they want to do. And they've got to show that by the report that they get. Because the other thing someone will talk to you about tonight is that you won't just walk into subjects because you pick it. You will have to qualify to get into various subjects as well. So we need to take all that on board. We need to understand it. If you do have any questions about subject selection, I suggest you see Mrs Keegan and Mrs Dean, have an interview with them and talk to them about it. Those gentlemen who are doing apprenticeships, especially see Mrs Dean and get those subjects sorted out as well. And if you can cover all those bases, I'm sure you'll make all the right decisions and you'll have a successful time going through the senior school.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Catherine Keegan and I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning at the college. My job tonight is to make sure that you and your sons are prepared to go through to year 11 and 12, to make sure you've got all the things that you need to get a HSC, and also for those of you who are interested to make sure that we meet all of the requirements for an ATAR. I'm well aware that there are some parents for whom this might be second, third, fourth time, perhaps even fifth time through tonight, and I'm very grateful to you for supporting your sons. But I'm also aware that there are some parents here tonight for whom this is very, very, very new. Mr. Miller mentioned already about asking questions, so please, at the end of the night, if you do have any questions, please feel free to come and ask them. No question is too silly, I can assure you. All right, there are a number of reasons that you might like to consider going on to year 11 and 12. It gives you a bit more time to grow up and develop your maturity. You might like to prepare for study at university, or you might like to start to look at things like trade courses, and Mrs. Dean will talk about those in more detail. Mr. Miller already mentioned that the government has increased the school leaving age to 17, and he's outlined very thoroughly the reasons or the criteria that you need to meet if you're going to actually leave earlier. So for the basics for a preliminary year, for those of you who are not up with that terminology, a preliminary year is the first 3 terms of year 11. Right, so terms 1, 2 and 3. We begin the HSC in term 4 of year 11, and then that runs through to the end of term 3 in year 12. When you are in year 11, you'll need to have a minimum of 12 units for the Board of Studies. In year 12, you'll need a minimum of 10. Because it's the college requirement that you study religion, most of our boys will have 13 units in year 11 and 11 units in year 12. As I mentioned, religion is compulsory. English is the other subject that is compulsory for years 11 and 12 at the college. Another consideration that you need to take into account, and that we will look very carefully at for each boy, is to make sure, to get a HSC, they must have what's referred to as 6 board-developed units. So all of the English courses count in that, so you're only going to have 2 more subjects that are referred to as board-developed. So in the handbook that has been available now for a month or so, there are a number of courses that are not board-developed, and they're marked quite clearly. We only have a few of those, so you need to make sure that you are looking predominantly at the ones that are board-developed to count your 6 units. Most courses are also 2 units in value, and religion and extension are exceptions to that. We have a number of religion courses. Mrs. Clark, our Director of Mission, will speak about that a little bit later. For our board-developed courses, all of our courses that we offer are board-developed, with the exception of Catholic Studies, our VET courses, Sport, Lifestyle and Rec, Photography, and General Maths 1, which is a course that's offered in Year 12. Our board-endorsed course, the thing that they have for them is that they're offered by TAFE generally, or sometimes by the college as well, but you cannot count those in your ATAR. You can count them in your HSC, but you can't count them in your ATAR. For those gentlemen who are interested in university entrance, and I mentioned at the beginning that that's not necessarily going to be everyone, right? Not everyone has to get an ATAR. You can indicate to us in Year 12 that you don't require one. To get an ATAR, you need to have at least 10 board-developed units, 2 of which must be English. Now, if you're interested in courses such as construction, IT, metals and engineering, or primary industries, you can still count that towards your ATAR, provided you're only counting one of those. So there's a restriction on that. You can only count one of those towards your ATAR. Now, this is also something that we will look at very closely with each of the gentlemen going as they move into Year 12 to make sure that if they do want an ATAR, they meet the requirements. The issues with Category A and B courses don't come up quite as much now because we don't offer terribly many Category B courses. Most of our courses are Category A, and they're the ones that go towards an ATAR. Those ones I mentioned earlier don't. Mrs. Giles will speak very briefly later in the evening about mathematics, but unlike some schools, we don't make it compulsory to study mathematics here. If you are not enjoying maths up to Year 10, you don't have to continue with it into Year 11. It would be important, the first point of call would be your teacher, but also it would be important to speak to Mrs. Giles about that tonight. Another issue that has been in the media a great deal in the last couple of years is the choice between mathematics and general mathematics. There has been a lot of stuff in the media indicating that students have not been given the credit that they deserve for studying higher levels of mathematics. This is certainly looks the case in the ATAR, but you need to be aware that the universities do change their rules. You also need to be aware that that really only applies to the very highest marks in general maths, and as a rule, you are, it's of more benefit to you if you are able to do the harder course. One of the things you will need to take into account though, and particularly those of you who may have been through this process before, the University of Sydney has indicated that they have they are going to reintroduce course prerequisites for 2019. And those course prerequisites are based entirely on mathematics. Now, it's very hard, I'm sure, to see that list from where you're sitting, but when I put that list together, it's a surprisingly long list of courses where you need to achieve a band 4 or above, so that's a 70 or above, in the calculus-based maths course in order to get access to these courses. So over the last 10 years or so, the universities have indicated things like they assumed knowledge. They'd like you to have studied mathematics, but you didn't have to have studied it. The University of Sydney has now indicated that they will change that, and if you want to go to the University of Sydney and do any of the courses that I've got on the screen, you must have at least mathematics and you must be achieving at least a band 4. So what subjects should you choose? It's really important that you consider what you're interested in and the abilities that you have and the success that you've had in the junior school. So if you find something really difficult or not at all interesting in the junior school, then it's probably not a good idea to continue with it in year 11 and 12. Mr. Miller also mentioned being your own man. Make sure that you choose things that you're interested in, not your friend. We always have multiples of classes, so you may choose something that you think is going to land you in the same class as your friend, and he might end up in the other class anyway. It's also important that you do take your career goals into account. I've mentioned the changes at the University of Sydney, but there are obviously other areas that you need to look at, and Mrs. Dean is an excellent source of information about that, and certainly both she and I have old UAT books which we are happy to lend to you if you want to take it home, talk to mum and dad about it, but of course the university websites these days are also fantastic. The other really important source of information is advice from your teachers. Talk to your teachers, see what they think that you should do. I mentioned already it's important to avoid choosing things with your friends, but it's also important to avoid choosing things just because you think it's going to get you a better ATAR. There was a school of thought around a number of years ago that if you just chose difficult subjects, you would automatically get a better ATAR. That is not the case. In my experience, those gentlemen who get the best ATAR are those gentlemen who choose, firstly, things that they're interested in and that they're really passionate about. Secondly, things that they've shown us an ability in. And thirdly, that they've got the appropriate level. You know, if you don't enjoy a particular subject, don't choose a really high level of it if you find it difficult. So, looking at our results, particularly during the time that I've been here, and certainly in my previous schools, the highest ATARs also always go to those people who are enjoying what they do and who have chosen carefully. Just some additional information. With our vocational courses, I mentioned a number of them earlier, so metals and engineering, primary industries, IT, and construction. We ask that you limit yourself to 2 of those courses because there is compulsory work placement with that, and you end up being out of school for a little bit too much time. We also ask that you are very careful about choosing those subjects where there's a major work involved. So subjects like visual arts and design and technology and timber. If that's your passion, that's fantastic, but there are major projects to be done in Year 12 and that they all come about the same time. So unless you're an exceptional planner, most people struggle with that sort of commitment. So we'll obviously take it on a case-by-case basis, but you need to be aware that in those subjects there are major works. Similarly, if you don't like standing up in front of people and performing, don't choose music. I've had a number of boys come to me over the years and say, I've suddenly got to stand up in front of someone and do a performance. Well, that's what music's about. So don't choose a subject like that if you can't manage to perform. You also need to look ahead. At the end of Year 11, we'll talk in more detail about how the HSC assessment process works. But you need to have it in your mind that half of your HSC mark comes from your school-based assessment. So that's not necessarily exams, it could be other types of tasks. So you need to have that in mind as you set off. I've mentioned that we'll also look at HSC requirements later on, but just have in mind that you must have a minimum of 10 and most boys will have 11. What have we done so far this year? Mr. Vetrano mentioned that our KLA coordinators have spoken to the boys at the end of last term. We have tonight. Mrs. Dean will speak about the Careers Forum, which is on next week. And Mrs. Dean and I will both be available for optional subject interviews during weeks 3 and 4. You should have received that information about booking that through school interviews. And my apologies, the 11th is the actual date on your form, so please ignore my date. So what should you be doing? You should be talking to as many people as you can about your subjects and listening to the advice that they give you. Speak to the KLA coordinator, they'll all be here tonight if you've got particular questions about courses. It's also a good idea to speak to boys who are currently doing those subjects. They'll be very realistic and very honest with you about the demands of assessment, the nature of different types of assessment. I'd also encourage you to have a look on the Board of Studies website. Each of the syllabus for the courses that we offer are available on the left-hand side of the Board of Studies website, and that will give you an idea of the sort of things that you'll be doing. Obviously, in some cases there are options and we may choose particular options, but it's an excellent place to start. As I mentioned, if you've got questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I just thought I'd run through very quickly some possible ways of putting together a pattern of study. Some of you may find this a little difficult to read, and I have to be honest, I've put the computer a little bit further away than I needed to, so I'm struggling a little bit too sometimes. This is an example of a student who is perhaps interested in the creative arts, but is also eligible for an ATAR. So Studies of Religion 2, English Advanced and Extension 1. English Extension 1 is a 1-unit subject, as is Maths Extension 1. Mathematics, Music 1, Visual Arts and Modern History. So that would be their 13 units. Perhaps the student is interested, has a broad range of interests, is thinking about the possibility of tertiary study, but is also interested in the vocational side of things. So Catholic Studies, Standard English, General Maths, Biology, Business, IPT, PhPE. Okay, wants to prepare for industry, doesn't want an ATAR. Catholic Studies, English Studies, General Maths 1, Construction, Industrial Technology, which we offer in both the timber and multimedia streams, Metals and Engineering, IPT. Perhaps someone is looking for a really rigorous pattern of study and wants to consider university prerequisites. So Studies of Religion, English Advanced, Mathematics and Mathematics Extension 1, Chemistry, Economics and Software Design. So a really difficult pattern of study which comes to the requirement of 12 units. One of the other things that you note also on your form, which you should have collected tonight, is that if you choose a number of particular subjects such as Advanced English, Mathematics or Mathematics Extension 1, Economics, Software or PhPE, you will require a signature from the head of the department. So please make sure that before you hand your form in, that you actually get those forms signed by the head of the department. Could I ask you particularly not to leave that till the last day, because they do sort of get overwhelmed on the last day, so it would be good to get organised in advance. I'm now going to ask Mrs. Clark to speak very briefly to you about the offers in religious education. She'll be followed by Mrs. Gardner, who will speak very briefly about English, and Mrs. Giles, who will speak very briefly about mathematics. As I said, I'll be available at the end of the evening for questions, and thank you very much for attending.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to be very quick. I know there's a lot of information tonight, but I've just been given permission to put my Director of Mission hat on first, and this is not regarding subject selection, but perhaps what I'm asked about most in Year 11 and 12 in the senior years is leadership. So I just wanted to very quickly remind you that information was sent home at the beginning of this year for any boy who was interested in putting his name forward for leadership in Year 11, which is the Big Brother program, and that criteria for that is to complete our community service project. There are quite a few boys I know sitting in front of me who have done some community service but have not been getting their logbook signed off. So that needs to happen in order for them to put their name forward. So that's just a bit of a reminder, because that leadership is really important as well in the senior years. So moving over to the religion side, the boys will really only have one or two decisions to make, because it is compulsory that they study a religious education subject. So the first decision that they make is, do I do Catholic studies or do I do studies of religion? If you are a non-ATAR student, so you're not thinking about university, I would suggest that you put down Catholic studies. If you are thinking of going to university and you want an ATAR, then you look at studies of religion. Studies of religion is different to what you've done already. It is a study of the 5 religious traditions, and it also involves religion and peace and history and all sorts of things. So if you're a good writer, you like the humanities, you're willing to put the effort in, studies of religion is a really good subject for you to do, especially if you love the history side. All right? So once you've decided you want to do studies of religion, think very carefully. Lots of boys start doing 1 unit and then wish they'd done 2. You can't move up, but you can move from 2 to 1. So my advice is, if you're thinking you're going to do well at it and you want to give it a go, start with 2 units to help make up your 12 in the preliminary year, and then you have the option of moving to 1 unit if that doesn't work. Alright, so again, I'll take questions on that, but pretty easy decision to make really for religious education subjects. Thanks.
Good evening, parents and Year 10 students. I'm here this evening to talk to you about the most important subject. And I'm not just saying that because it's my subject and because I love it, it's actually really true, because this subject is the only one that is mandatory. It's the only compulsory subject for the HSC. So if you decide to go on to years 11 and 12, you must study English. And you must study 2 units of English, and you must continue that study for the whole of Year 11 and Year 12. If you're someone who's working towards an ATAR, then you must count those 2 units of English in your final 10 units, which calculate your ATAR. So by that I mean it's compulsory to include those 2 units in your final ATAR score. So this means that selecting your course is a really important process, and this is the first opportunity I've had to speak to students in addition to parents. So I've been told to keep it quick, but I've got a bit to get through as well. So you basically have 3 options as your starting point: English Studies, English Standard and English Advanced. They're all 2-unit courses. English Studies is a course that's relatively new, and it's a non-ATAR course, and it's designed specifically for those students who do not want to go on to tertiary education. There's no HSC exam, and you're looking at texts that are workplace and community-based texts. So you're using those skills and developing knowledge that kind of has real-world applications, and those skills translate into the workforce in that way and to your life as a citizen. English Standard is the course that most students across the state study, and it's the course that most students at St Greg's study as well. It's still a pretty rigorous course academically. There are 4 hours of HSC exams for that course. And it's a literature-based course, which means that you spend a lot of time writing essays and you're assessed on your essay writing. There's just some information there about what kind of things you study in that course. And what we've been doing across year 7 to 10 is basically preparing you for standard English. And so those skills we've been looking at in English, we're working towards developing them further in year 11 and 12. English Advanced is, as the name would suggest, it's advanced, and that means you're looking at more difficult texts, you're looking at more sophisticated levels of reading and writing. Again, on paper it looks very similar to the standard course. There are 2 2-hour exams for the HSC. It's a literature-based course, lots of essay writing. But the thing that really sets advanced apart from standard is that you must study Shakespeare. So if you have been studying Shakespeare across year 7 to 10 and you really don't like it, then I wouldn't be choosing advanced English because it's the discriminator. Studying Shakespeare is compulsory and it makes it really quite difficult if you don't like it. And in saying that, if you're going to choose advanced English, there has to be a level of passion involved. You have to be passionate about English. You have to be prepared to kind of come out of the closet and say, as I do, I heart English, and it's something that you're interested in. It should be one of your top 3 subjects. It should be one of your favourite 3 subjects. You also need to have a proven track record in English. So we're looking at A and or B grades across years 7 to 10. Report marks above 70. You need to collect a signature from myself, and then you also need to be given approval to study from Mrs. Keegan, because it is, as I said, an academically rigorous course. For those students who really, really heart English, there's more. So you can do up to 4 units of English by the end of the HSC course. You might choose to do extension 1, so then we're studying 3 units of English. It's a very rigorous course, very academic. You're looking at skills in independent investigation, and you're also taking on a composition kind of role. If you are someone who loves writing and creating in English, then Extension 2 is an additional unit that you can do, and you undertake that in Year 12. So, how do you make your selection? The other day I spoke to my own Year 10 English class, and I gave them a very brief summary like this one here, and by the end of that time, most boys in my class knew exactly what kind of level of English they would need and what they were going to do. So it was a really affirming process. So you know yourself what your abilities are. So the best person to look to first of all is yourself. Then talking to your parents, talking to brothers and sisters who have done the HSC, and talking to friends in older year groups who can help you out with making a selection. Then your own English teacher is probably the best gauge of what your abilities are, so they can help you, and then I can also help you. As Mrs. Keegan has already mentioned this evening, Mrs. Dean can help you with respect to prerequisites at university and what you might need in terms of a career and workforce kind of positions. And Mrs. Keegan is also someone who can help. So if you're unsure, ask your own teacher first of all, but then I'll be here this evening to take questions as well. Thanks everyone.
I'm just going to talk very briefly about mathematics. Obviously there are in Year 11 3 levels of maths. We have our general course, which even if students say that they're going to do the General 1 course, the non-ATAR course in Year 12, all students in Year 11 do exactly the same preliminary General Maths course. So, and General Maths is not easy. You still have to work extremely hard, and the amount of work ethic that you need for General Maths is still very high. So again, students who at the moment aren't liking maths at all really need to think about it. Now, we would say that students that are doing the 5.2 pathway generally slot really well into general maths, because the maths that you're doing in 5.2 pathway are actually doing, working towards that level of general maths. The students in the 5.3 pathway, you are in the mathematics and extension 1 level. But again, you need to discuss with your teacher to find out whether or not extension might be the way for you. Now, I know that Mrs. Keegan's talked about the fact that Extension 1 is a 1-unit course, and you could use it with studies of religion to make up a 2-unit to get your 12 units in year 11. But if you are not overly sure of whether or not you're going to cope with Extension 1 maths, I would advise that you make it a 13th unit. So then it is possible for you to drop that extension, because extension maths is probably just as much work as the 2 units of mathematics. So even though it is 3 units, it's probably 4 units worth of work if you're going to do extension 1 maths. So if your work ethic is not overly good, because it is a lot of work, and you can ask any of the students in year 11 and 12 this year that are doing extension, and they will tell you how much time they need to give to that subject every single night. So please speak to your teachers, and I'm sure that a lot of teachers have already been discussing with you. If any parents or any students have any other concerns, they can come and speak to myself as well, and I'll try and direct you in the right place. Okay?
Good evening. The next few minutes I'm just going to go on the other side, probably talking to the boys who are looking at a vocational pathway for year 11 and 12, and sometimes that may just be something that a boy does for year 11, and then he perhaps gives up the vocational course at the end of year 11 and continues on to an academic pathway for year 12. Mrs. Keegan briefly talked about vocational courses, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on them. But vocational courses are exactly what the name implies. They're courses that are also relevant to industry, and many people would choose a course, for example construction, with the idea in mind of heading into an apprenticeship at the end of year 12. Boys who leave or come and see me about leaving at the end of year 10 to get an apprenticeship will often find it very difficult if you do not have a connection. The big dividing, or the changing rule, I suppose, is that most employers want an apprentice to be able to drive. And so by the end of year 10, very few of you would be in a position where you'd be able to have your licence ready to drive. If you continue on and you do construction over year 11 and 12 and maybe add timber to that, or go to TAFE and do plumbing, then you come very well prepared for an apprenticeship in any of those areas, and obviously by that time, 9 times out of 10, you have your licence. So if you just bear in mind that the vocational courses are often based to end up with an industry qualification that's recognised, and that is building towards that end. We did mention the 4 of them, they're in the booklet, so I don't want to go over the things that are already there. Dual accreditation means that you get the HSC qualification, but you also get an industry-based qualification. Mrs. Keegan did mention this, but it's something that's really important, a little bit of a game changer sometimes. All of them have 1 week of work experience per year that you do it. So if you take 2 vocational courses, you have 2 weeks of work placement in 1 year, and then you have 2 more if you do it into year 12. So that's 4 weeks out of a very busy timetable, and that sometimes, again, can cause a little bit of trouble with boys organising timetables, because you are away from school for a week, and obviously you are expected to find that work that you've missed out, and or assessments and all those things. The boys who do it well are the ones who plan it, the ones who talk it through with myself and with their teachers, and really look at a good time management plan. It is well and truly achievable, It just needs to have that little bit of common sense attached to it. As Mrs. Keegan said, you can use those courses to have 2 units of that towards your HSC. The TAFE courses is a different type of thing. There are a lot of courses that the TAFE colleges offer that we cannot offer. They have the facilities. One of the big ones that a lot of the boys go to from here is automotive. Down at Campbelltown TAFE, they have the workshops, they have the cars, and boys can go and spend an afternoon. Usually it's a Tuesday afternoon, and usually they leave at lunchtime, so they miss period 5. We take the boys to TAFE. We can transport our boys to Campbelltown TAFE, but they are expected to be picked up. You have to make your arrangements for coming home. Most courses down at Campbelltown run from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. in the night time. Again, if you choose to do a TAFE course, and they're very varied and take into account many things, then they're also worth 2 units of towards your HSC. I have a table down there that looks a bit like the Easter show with all give-outs and things, so I can see you down there at the end of this. This is the TAFE handbook. Every course that is offered to students is in this book, and you can pick up a copy of that. They're free, but I don't have one for everybody. So please don't take one if you're really not sure that that's something you want to do. I have them in my careers room, and you can come and talk to me, gentlemen, about them as well. The application forms for those are also on the back table, and they have a closing date at the end of in 2 weeks' time. And I'll put that as an email out to everybody, just so you have these dates in your mind. With the TAFE course, there is a cost involved. And at this stage, during Year 11, the school will pick up 50% of that course, and parents will have to pay the other 50%. The TAFE courses range approximately from $1,500 over to about $3,000 for electrotechnology, which is the beginning of an electrician's course. So do your maths, we'll pay $1,500 and yourselves will do the other. The TAFE bill, luckily, doesn't come until the end of the year, and many parents choose to pay off their TAFE bill right from the beginning of Year 11, so it's not such a big thing at the end of it. There are occasionally classes held in that magic first week that we get extra on the last holidays, so you do have to be prepared that you may have to go to TAFE during that time, because TAFE is still on for everybody else, but not luckily for us. And also, a lot of those TAFE courses also have a week of work placement. So again, looking at your time management, if you're doing a vocational course here, you may have to be aware that TAFE will also ask for a week. The next thing that we do have, and we've got quite successful at, are our school-based apprenticeships. Now these boys, if you choose to do this, you are looking at a non-ATAR pattern of study. And what it means is that by the end of your Year 12, you will have done the equivalent of the first year in an apprenticeship. So you will do 3 days of school, 1 day at work and 1 day at TAFE during Year 11. During Year 12, you do 4 days of school and 1 day at work. And as I said, at the end of Year 12, you will achieve your HSC, and you will have the equivalent of your first year in whatever apprenticeship you choose. I'm assuming that apprenticeships you would understand are the trades, so building, plumbing, electrician, those type of areas are all classified as apprenticeships. We've also got boys who are doing traineeships, and that normally is anything else. We've got a boy doing banking, we've got a boy doing aged care, and we're going into those areas in our traineeships. So those 2 things are available. They're a very successful way of doing it. The only thing you have to be, again, is organised. And if you take on senior study, we'll support you in all of that, but that's what you need to be. Organised with your time management and your workload for both school and what's happening outside. Again, there is an expression of interest form at the back that I will have there this afternoon, tonight, and they're due in 2 weeks' time. The hardest thing about a school-based apprenticeship is finding someone to sponsor you. The TAFE are very good and very supportive of that area, and if we put in an expression of interest form, they will try and canvass for an employer. If you have someone, then that's obviously much better. But again, the sooner you come and see me about it, the sooner we get to talk about it, the sooner we can start those things. If you're going to study any kind of course from now on at TAFE or the White Card, for example, that's a lot of the boys are doing for their to be able to go on to work experience, then 2 years ago the government introduced a system called a USI, which is a unique student identifier number. And any person who's going on to any kind of training needs a USI. Doesn't cost you anything to do, takes about 10 minutes. But I cannot register you for any course at TAFE or White Card or anything if you don't have one. If you're not sure about how to go about a USI, then all you really need to do is have another form of identification. I have the forms down where I will be tonight for those as well. A few people have mentioned the Careers Forum. That's a big thing for us. I think perhaps because I was talking to somebody just before this, and the Macarthur area has a Careers Forum. And we chose not to go to that a number of years ago. The reason being that they don't really encourage parents to it. And I found that some of the boys went with perhaps not the same discipline or the idea in mind that if we ran it here, we could have. To convince the universities and the TAFEs and the private colleges to come here means I have to give them an audience. And I have to give them a reason to come. So everybody who comes says that they get a lot of information out of it. So I did send an email out this afternoon to all of you, and I would encourage you to be here next week. It is in the hall. It goes from 3 o'clock till 4:30. All of the major universities, with the exception of the University of Technology, are coming, and all the private providers. If you're looking for apprenticeships to sign up, if you're looking at leaving school, then all of that area is also being taken care of. There is a publication put out by the University Admission Centre, so that's UAC. This is the prerequisites that you will need to get into university in 2019. We only get a couple of copies of this at school. Gentlemen, you're welcome to come and use it in my office, and I can photocopy things or take photos on your phone. That's the only time I'll let you get your phone out, but you can use that there. But it's also online under the UAC website, and it gives you the prerequisites and any type of information you need for any course that you think you might like to apply for at university when you're going to get there in 2019. Work experience, we put out some paperwork this morning. We need the booklets back in here in 2 weeks' time, so that's August the 1st. So I would ask that people start getting onto those, the main thing of getting the paperwork at the back filled out and signed off. Again, because we need to start processing, and particularly for boys that are having trouble finding a job. I'm very aware of time, and I can hear Mr. Miller sighing next to me. I've got one last thing. You see his face. So I'll end with a bang. This is up to you. A little bit of trivia. This is a publication by the Australian Government from the Department of Employment. It lists the jobs for 2016, and what it does is it gives you information about the next 5 years. Where jobs are going to be, what areas have been changed, what areas are still to be looked at and invented. And I did a very quick summary. They're down there. You don't have to take them, but I thought if you were interested, and as parents, some of you might be worried if you've still got a job in 5 years, because there's a few disappearing. But you're welcome to take that as well. Thank you for your time and patience, and I'm here to see you if you need. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If you see me, it's all good because we're almost done. I'm just here tonight to talk to you about boarding. Very quickly, some of you would have heard this last year, so it will be brief, and I've just put some statistics up soon, which hopefully might give you some things to think about. If you sat there tonight and thought, gee, that's all pretty challenging, well, I guess boarding could be your saving grace in year 11 and 12. And I guess that's why a lot of boys do join up for weekly boarding. So I'm really addressing those boys here tonight and those families thinking about that potentially as an option. I'll come to these results in a minute. We currently have 140 boarders from all over the country, New South Wales. But about 25% of our year 11 and 12 boarders come from all around here. And for the first time I can say tonight we have our first boarder from Gregory Hills, which is fairly extraordinary. He can't walk to school yet though. As one of the boys said to me recently, although they always say to me that those boys get the best of both worlds. They're here with the structure, support, routine they need during the week, and they're here with their mates, and they get great food at the ref, and then they go home and get even better food on the weekends and time with family. So that's, I guess, the benefit of weekly boarding. If you could do that, it's probably something I would have really loved at school if I had that option. It costs you about $80 a day. That's the reality of it. That's less than childcare, but not when you add the school fees on top as well. So there is a financial cost to boarding. But I guess you look at it as a serious investment. If you are sitting there and you're on that cusp of thinking, do I do an ATAR or not? Am I going to go into university? How serious am I about this? Where am I at in my subjects? Am I just teetering on the edge of getting into the band 6 area or the band 5? Or is it just about passing? Well, we can help with that. And that's the reality. And some of these results I'll show you tonight will show you that. This boy here, student A, I've called him, he joined weekly boarding last year. And his results there, he did maths 5.3, you heard Mrs. Giles talk about. He got 58 in that. This year he's doing mathematics and he's just got 76 in his latest report. English, he got 78 last year, he's doing advanced English, 73. So it's not outstanding, but he's maintaining it and he's doing a more challenging level of English now. Timber, he's gone from 77 to 81. Science there, 82. He's now doing physics and he's getting 88. That's just one student's results. Another boy here, also did maths 5.3. He's gone from 63 to 79. English, 63 to 80, 65 to 83. Science he's dropped, but he's gone to physics, and obviously it's a far more challenging subject. But things to work on. Last student here, maths 5.2, he's now doing general maths. He's dropped, so that's a conversation we'll have with him now and say, you need to access more of the maths tutors that are available to you. So this is the analysis we're now doing on students. This is to avoid the Mr. Miller situation where he finds a boy who's failed his subjects and wonders how it's happened and he's been watching movies. Well, the reality is, until we sometimes get these results through, you don't know always what's happening. It's not a magic fix coming into boarding, but it provides the environment your boys will need. It gives them every support they need to do their best, basically. So, as I said, it's not a magic fix, but everything's there that they need to help them get those results they can. And you see there his English has gone up, and his PDHP is pretty extraordinary, 57 through to 97 as well. So that's just some hard and fast stats for you from 3 boys currently from year 11 boarding from their latest reports. It's just a snapshot. As I said, it's not perfect, and the thing we look at now is we can actually work with those boys and look at the areas they need extra help in, and we can go about doing that for them. So that's what boarding provides. If you are interested, very happy to show you any time you like, show you the facilities. Please talk to me again tonight and encourage your sons to talk to me as well. I'll often ask them, are you wanting to do this or is it what your parents want? Boys have to want it, because otherwise, like everyone's talked tonight, if you don't want this journey of year 11, 12 and you don't want to go into university, well, yeah, why would you do it? You've got to want that, and it's boarding. If you're going to invest that and make that significant sacrifice that parents are making, you've got to put 100% into it. So, here to help with that, please have a chat with me tonight.
Just say thank you to all the staff who are here tonight. Thank Mr. Speaker for organising the evening. Mr. Brennan's here, Mr. Byrne's here, they've been looking after the AD and that sort of things for us. We also have all our KLA coordinators here with you down the back after it. I know you've been hit with a lot of information tonight and you most probably need time to digest it. That's why I recommended also that you seriously consider having interviews with Mrs. Big and Mrs. Dean down the track as well. 2 last ads, the afternoon study classes, Monday, Tuesday afternoon, they're for year 10, 11 and 12. Boys who go along to that, as a generalisation, usually improve on what they're doing. The other side of life is boys going into 10, 11 and 12 for English assessments and other things have to get up to speed in front of the class and be able to put 2 words together well if they want to do well in those subjects. Why am I telling you that? I sent you an email yesterday, or Daniela did. It was about Toastmasters. It starts next Thursday night, once for 6 weeks, 2 hours a night. boys who do it generally improve their public speaking because of that. I had a young gentleman who came up this morning and he came and said he wanted to Toastmasters. I said to the gentleman straight away, Mum's idea or yours? He smiled and knew it was Mum straight away on that one. But there was another one who came in and he said, look, let's put it this way, sir, I was strongly encouraged to come. I thought, what a great relationship, isn't that fantastic? Okay, over to you. Good night, thank you for coming, and people are down the back.